So who holds the power in a healthy relationship? In the power struggle phase, which is today's topic, we'll give you that answer. Now, there's 5 relationship stages or phases, and we already did the honeymoon stage, which is stage 1, and this is now the power struggle phase. And we're gonna go to each individual stage, give you a little bit of background, also understanding what some things that can get you stuck in negative stages, and what are some things that help stay in those positive stages. But before we go into that, let me tell you a bit about myself. I got my doctorate, I got my master's, I taught at multiple universities. I actually have real estate, I opened multiple businesses. So basically I did a lot of research throughout my life, and I want to be able to use that research knowledge and that skill to be able to look at information, digest information, and package it very nicely for you to utilize and leverage for your daily life. But again, on top of that, let me tell you about my channel. We have relationships, which is going to be mostly what's going on with today. Single dad parenting, which is who I am. I have a 6-year-old daughter I take care of majority of the time. I have personal growth and also attachment theory. And so I really think it kind of wells really well together. But before we go into the power struggle phase, I want to go into just a little overview of all 5 stages real quick so you can understand, and then we'll just jump right in it. Let's go. So let's talk about the 5 stages to a relationship, all right? You have romance stage and the honeymoon stage. You have the power struggle phase or the love hangover. You have the stability stage, commitment stage, and then you have, lastly, the bliss or co-creation stage. Now, in the romance and the honeymoon stage is when nothing that person could do is wrong. They're amazing and they're positive, but also it's problematic because you're not really being open fully because you want things to work. While the power struggle phase is really when the problem happens and you start to see the flaws and you start to really, can I be with this person? And majority of the breakups happen in that power struggle phase. And then you have the stability phase. That's when you get a little deeper and you start to try, you know what? I respect the person you are. I'm not gonna change you. We're gonna grow individually, and we're gonna find ways to grow individually together without crossing each other's boundaries in a creative way. And just that's when things get deeper, more traveling, more doing things together, like learning together. This is when the stage that happens for that. And then you have the commitment stages when you start to realize, okay, we're flawed individuals, we're human, so relationships are gonna have problems. And you start to realize because that relationship's gonna have problems, you can find ways to be creative and find solutions. But at the end of the day, it's when you make the concerted effort that I choose to be with this person and I will do what it takes to be with that person. That's what the commitment stage really is. And then you have co-creation and bliss. This is when you have the babies, you have like starting businesses. You get to a point where a lot of the problems that will arise in most business partnerships or parenting, you've learned how to get yourself down packed and how to handle relationships together on your own. And now you'll be able to add another uncertainty figure because the 2 people that are involved are more certain. So these are the 5 stages, and we're gonna go through each one of them. Let's jump into them. The power struggle phase, and exactly what it says. Let's say you have 2 people, and those 2 people represent 2 individual companies, and they've been doing great individually for years, and they have their own policies, own procedures, own personnel, own vision, own mission statement, and now you're going to try to merge those companies together. What's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of power struggle on how things are going to be run. Well, how are we going to do HR, and how are we going to do business development? Now, see how that translates in relationships. Like, how are we going to parent? How are we going to spend money? What kind of vacations are we going to do? And what happens is both companies before the merger had control and they did things a certain way and it worked for them. But now they're trying to transpose what's worked for them onto the other company, which causes the struggle, right? And that's just the topics and trying to fight and control from that perspective. Then you have the whole emotional side. You have the fears, the insecurities, the traumas. Like, you know, you've had times when you've been walking on eggshells because you don't want to activate somebody else's trigger and then they blow up. And then you also got to find out you have your own insecurities and fears that you're trying to overcome so you can be able to speak properly and open up about what's going on your end. So, see, often what happens, you have two types of people. You have a person who, when conflicts arise and struggle happens, they get withdrawn and they space. Or you have the person who is gonna try to bring closeness and try to find answers now. And what happens is that conflict, which is very similar to the dismissive avoidant and also the anxious attachment style. And you can learn more about that in the attachment style video that I have over here. which is another way of looking at relationships. Is a great way of understanding relationships in a different way. But that causes like tension, like a rubber band. If you keep having that push and pull, 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 eventually it's going to lose its elasticity, and eventually over time, then it's eventually going to break. And that's another sign where you can start to realize, okay, maybe I am in the power struggle phase. But there is a purpose to the stage. If we just focus on the high that you get from the honeymoon stage, we will lose ourselves, and then eventually it wouldn't work out overall. The key is trying to find a way to keep your individual selves in the relationship while keeping the bond and connective and support intact, which is more easier said than done. What happens is one side starts to say, I need you to be more indirectly. You need you to be more like me, or you need to be a certain way, or you're not like when I was when they first met. And then what happens is sometimes they start to punish the other person because they're not what they expect them to be or what they should have been. And that happens vice versa. And when that happens, then it's almost like a point where you're trying to change that person, and then subconscious resentment comes in, and now they're like, okay, they'll find ways to sabotage. And the smallest disagreements become the biggest anthill to a mountain. It becomes a huge deal, and then people just feel abandoned, alone, and problematics. But one thing you gotta understand, it's okay. It's completely normal, all right? Like it's almost evolutionary how it works. You need to go through those struggles to be able to grow enough to go from here. That's another way you look at the power struggle phase. I think people look at that as a negative perspective, or you can look at it as the growth phase of your relationship, that you became the better version of yourself, found yourself better, and found ways how you can be with somebody else that's not going to hinder your own policies and procedures. So how long does this stage actually last? And it can last from a couple of months, few months, or it can last up to 50 years. I mean, some people don't ever get out of the power struggle. They just kind of learn how to float through it. And so there's three things that really can affect it, okay? It's gonna be like their ability to change. How can people really change? Like people like, you shouldn't change yourself. No, Nucka, if you wanna grow, you're gonna change. And so it's making sure you change within your boundaries. You don't cross them, so you don't resent yourself for crossing it. But growth and change is important. And then you have attachment styles, depending on how that works. Now, again, a video on it is really great. It really changed my life and perspectives, but depending on your attachment styles can help you understand where you are and who your partner is, and so you can move to a common goal. And then lastly is what repair advice you get. Are you getting somebody who has fruit on the tree? Or are you having somebody who's been broken up 10 times in the past 3 months and is on the next person? So those factors have a huge component on it. But then usually what happens is you have two ways how it usually happens. In the power struggle phase, usually in most situations, people break up. It's sad to say, that's one of the options. But the second thing is a lot of times people just survive and they just kind of lose themselves in a relationship and they just go with the flow, and it ends up not working, and it ends up being this kind of going through the motions, doing what is expected of them instead of being in a relationship because they want to be in. And so usually the relationship ends in those two ways, but there is a third option. And the third option is learning how to find your individual self and be able to express yourself while also having a connection and bond and support from the other person. Like Tony Robbins says, there's 6 basic human needs that we need. And a lot of times you gotta figure out how to get those needs met on your own and then supplement the person you're with. But what are some things to get you out of this power struggle phase or make this power struggle phase a little bit more tolerable? So how do you overcome the power struggle phase? And how you overcome it is these things. They're not in any specific order, but the first thing is conquering or confronting your demons. And that's the demons of yourself. And the thing is you really can't change anybody else, but you can work on yourself. And as I talked about earlier about the fears, insecurities, and traumas that you have, being aware of those and overcoming them will actually make you more readily available and able to be there with somebody else. And sometimes by setting that example, the other person will raise to that example, or sometimes it'll separate to a point to find the person that you're really supposed to be with. Number 2, share the power. Share the power. You realize that like using force to get what you want does not help you in the long run. It may help you in the short term, but resentment and conflict and manipulation will come on the back of it, which is gonna really derail the relationship in and of itself. Creating space. Now, creating space really helps by having healthy communication and very intuitive communication or non-intuitive communication styles that we're really raised with. And I have a great video, the 9 communication killers, and also I have another video which is called How to Communicate Issues Within a Relationship. Those things are really ways that help you understand how to communicate in a way that it feels safe. And one of the best ways you can tell is a safe environment is how fast you can repair a problem or fix a problem. If when an issue comes, do you need 5 days to resolve it, or can you resolve it in real time? And that's when you really see the strength of a healthy relationship. But also don't let your emotions get involved in over you. Like you start getting emotions take care of what's going on, it's gonna activate the other individual and you won't get anywhere. All right, next thing, the struggle is a part of it, guys. The struggle is real, as they always say. Like relationships are supposed to have struggle. It's not supposed to be perfect, all right? When you start to realize that, you start to have more understanding when a struggle does come, and you start to realize, okay, this is another problem. We both know how to communicate and have the situations. We'll find a solution. When you don't know they're coming, sometimes it blindsides you, and then your subconscious can come in and really wreak havoc in the relationship. And now sometimes when you're in a relationship and you say you listen to this video and you've been in a relationship for 2-3 years, you have a lot of wounds and past hurt that needs to be forgiven and healed before you really can add more on top of it. So talking about the discussions, because the past is a murky place. And if you look back, oh, you said this, well, you said that, it doesn't really matter, right? What's the intention about what was going on? What was the point of it? And then let it go. Because if you have that broken brick at the bottom, it's gonna be a horrible foundation for the house when you start to drill stuff on top of it, and it's always gonna come back and bite you behind. To be honest with you, letting things go in the past and moving forward is probably one of the best things you can do when you've been in a relationship for a while. Understanding and appreciating the differences. Like, to be honest with you, we are made to actually meet people who are opposite from ourselves. Because if we're the same, then you don't have another person that's adding value and really helping you in other areas. Like somebody who's good at organizing, or somebody who's good at thinking ahead. So what happens is y'all can complement each other and add value. So the differences may look scary, but if you look at it from a perspective like, okay, we can actually find a way to use that in a way that's beneficial in a relationship, is a very strong way to handle it. One of the things is remember what got you guys together. Like remember the things like, okay, why do we love each other? Why do we have commonalities? When you get in the power struggle phase, it's gonna focus so heavily on the negative, which needs to be resolved. But you can't lose sight of the positive there too. And so it'll help you push through. So doing things like having appreciation of that person every day. I talked about the compound effect where this guy wrote every day one positive thing about his wife for a gift for her after doing a year. And after the year, he loved his wife so much more because he looked at the positive instead of focusing so much on the negative. And the last thing is try to get outside help. Like try to go out and get outside help for yourself individually, which can go back and creating to confronting those demons that what I talked about before, but also in couples, because having a third person there, it's amazing. And sometimes people don't like therapy because they usually get a bad therapist. I have a good video that helps you kind of like find a good therapist. But if you can't do it on your own, having a third person there to actually be a mediator and has wisdom of handling and understanding these stages would be beneficial too. So power struggle phase, final thoughts. You can look at it from a perspective of it's a struggle and you got to work through it, or you can look at it as it's a growth phase to become the best version of yourself for yourself while also in the relationship. Again, to get out of the power struggle phase is finding ways of both people to feel like they have the individual choices in lives and boundaries in place, but still have a connection and bond together. Easier said than done. It sounds nice, but before we go, please like and subscribe the video. it took a lot of work. I read a lot of research. Probably read about 15 to 20 different articles, really trying to get this information together. And I'm down the road, I'm going to actually break it down even in different sections, because there's so much information on this but I'll do that at a different time. And but as I end all my videos, again, if you have kids, slow down and give them a hug and tell you love them. And you should do it on a consistent basis, but also just tell them they're worthy. They're amazing and fabulous because they've been born, they made you better. They need to hear it not just once, on multiple occasions. And the more secure our children are, the less of these problems like the power struggle phase will have on them in their future. So next time, we're going to do the stability phase, which is going to be a lot more fun and smooth than this power struggle phase, or growth phase, depending on how you look at it. See you then, guys.